Welcome everybody to this tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about how to blur faces using Blender. And we're going to go through two separate methods. Both have their pros and cons. But before we get into that, I just want to let you guys know, you might not know this, but I actually have another channel here. Just search Jacob Swing on YouTube and it'll come up with my other channel. Over there we talk about all sorts of things, mainly photography and image manipulation tutorials in Raw Therapy and GIMP, and some Darktable stuff, and I also have some Blender tutorials over there as well. But since that channel seemed like it was more image based, I moved all of the 3D and VFX stuff to this current channel. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So in order to do the first method, let's just go ahead and open up a video editing workspace, and I'm here in the video sequencer. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up a movie, and I'm just going to get a movie that has my face in there. Now I always just like to run over to view and waveforms and turn those on so I can see the audio, and then I come up here in the viewer and hit N and switch the proxy render size to 25%, and then last but not least select my video strip and come over here to proxy, strip, proxy, and timecode, and rebuild. Now once that's done, I can scroll back and forth without having any lag, regardless of how big my video is, like if it's a 4K video or so. I'm also going to set my end frame there. Okay, and then I'm just going to edit this. So let me just hit K on my keyboard to start. The other thing that I'm going to do before I start editing is I'm going to come up here to this scene drop down menu, and I'm just going to change this to face blur, edit, and then I'm going to add a new scene, and I'm just going to copy the settings, and I'm just going to call this face blur comp. There we go. And now in the new scene, that is the face blur comp, since we already have the correct start and end point, I can go back to my edit scene and hit Shift A, and here where it says scene, I can drop in a scene, and you can see that everything disappears, and I will explain why we're doing what we're doing. So these are the two different ways of getting a face blur. You can do one through a comp strip, or you can do one here in the timeline, but both rely on the same base, and that is go ahead and adding in a mask. So we'll come here to the VFX workspaces and down to motion tracking, and then let's go ahead and open up the same video. So we have the same video, and I'm just going to go ahead and come to a point where my face enters the scene. And now if I'm in the tracking drop down menu here, I'm just going to drop in a tracker, and I'm just actually going to track my nostril right there. So I'll track it backwards, and since I'm getting closer to the edge, I'm just going to have to do that by hand. But now here that I'm away from the edge, so the first thing you got to do is track. And sometimes if your tracker kind of jumps there, so you can see it jumps, I can just move it back up and keep tracking. And I'll just make sure to move this off. Okay, now we're basically 3/4 of the way there. The other thing that I'm going to do is then come here, switch this from tracking to mask, and add in a new mask, and I'm just going to call this face blur. And I'm going to go ahead and just hold down Control, and I'm going to add in a few points until I want to close off my mask, and then I'll hit Alt-C to close off my mask, and then I'll select all 4 points and hit V, and I'm going to say Auto, and that's just going to give me some nice points that I can then kind of move around. Alright, now that your mask is added in there, go ahead and click away so that everything is deselected, and then hit L on your keyboard to select your mask, and then hit Shift left click in order to select your track, and then hit Control. Let me see here. Right now there's no parent down here. If you hit Control P, you see that you have now parented the mask to the tracker. So as I move, so does the mask. And that really helps to automate things, because even like, that's why I went ahead and you can see here as I come in, the mask is a little bit off. So I'm going to fix that by coming here to a place that the mask is in the kind of the right spot, and I'll turn on my auto keying and hit I, and then move a little forward, hit I again, and now here I move forward so that my face actually gets seen by the mask, or kind of exceeds the mask. So I'm going to rotate this and scale it up and hit I, and then kind of bring the mask back down and hit I. Okay, then I'll go to the end as well, can do the same thing. So instead of having to go through frame by frame and match everything, I can just kind of do a few extra frames of work. Alright, and then last but not least, I can see when my tracker is active if I have this motion trail going on. So if I go to the next frame, you see that my tracker is no longer active. So I'm going to go to that last frame, and here in the opacity I'm going to hit I, and then in the following frame I'm going to change the opacity to 0 and hit I again, just to add a keyframe. So the frame before my mask is on, the frame after it's off. And I'm going to do that here at the beginning as well. That way I'm not blurring things that aren't my face. Okay, so now that we've gone ahead and added in all of the keyframes that need to happen, and we've tracked our mask to a tracker, so let me just save this real quick. We're good to go. So let's go ahead and do method 1. Method 1 is actually using our face blur comp scene. So I'm just going to go ahead and come here to VFX. Once I have my face blur comp scene selected, go to VFX and compositing, and then I'm just going to choose a frame here kind of in the middle, and I'm going to change my top here to a image editor, and then the bottom here in the dope sheet to a compositor, and turn on use nodes, and then make sure that you have node wrangler selected in your add-ons, and you can control shift click on your render layers, and that will add in a viewer, and then up here you can select the viewer node. Now the first thing we need is our video clip, so I'm going to hit shift A and search and add in a movie clip. And then I can just select my movie clip because it was already imported here in our motion tracking scene. And then I'm going to hit Shift A and add in a reroute node. And then I'll connect both of these up to the reroute and hit X, and then connect up our video clip to the reroute. So now we have our video. Next, I'm going to go ahead and add in alpha over, and I'm going to connect up my video to both, and then I'm going to put a blur node on the bottom socket there. So, and then I'll blur. Let's make this blur something pretty heavy, maybe 15, maybe even heavier, 30. And then all I have to do is hit Shift A and search for a mask, and select our mask from the drop-down menu, and then stick that into the factor. And you can see that things are blurred. Okay, so it looks like there's a scaling issue, which is why this is offset. So I'm going to go ahead and come here to scale and stick that in there and change this to render size. And now we're set. For whatever reason, this video is less than what the render size is. What is the render size? Anyway, so that was that issue. And then you can just increase this blur here to something even bigger, 50. And there you go, you have a nice blurred face. And then if you go back to your face blur edit and your video editing tab, you can see that with our scene strip here, everything has been updated. So that's way one, and the reason that you might do it that way is if you have some CG elements that you're comping over your shot, or for me personally, I really prefer the color correction tools in the Compositor over the ones here in the video sequence editor. So for me, I always do this. I import all of my videos and then I make a scene for each video, and then I go ahead and set the frame range within each scene, and then I'm free to go ahead and edit. And what you can do is just hide this, and then you can go through and edit, and I just make a meta strip by hitting Control G, and then I can go through and edit, and all of the edits, since they're applied to the meta strip, mean that they're also applied to both of my strips inside. And then before I do a final render, I just pop into each meta strip and unhide the scene strip, and you can get some really great results with that. Okay, on to method 2. So now let me hit Control R. You can see that my face is not blurred anymore, which is fine. In order to blur faces from here within the video sequencing editor, you just go ahead and hit Shift A with your strip selected, and come down here to Effect Strip, and first duplicate your strip by hitting Shift D, and then Y, and move that up one layer, and then hit Shift A and Gaussian blur, and let's go ahead here to the strip. And here we're in the size, let's go ahead and change that to, I don't know, 50. And now that you've got your Gaussian blur selected, then you come here to modifiers and mask, and change the mask input type to mask, and then just select your mask. And last but not least, go back up to the strip options, and here where it says compositing, change the blend mode to alpha over, and there you go. It's all ready, set to go. So anyway, I hope that this has been helpful for you guys. If it has, go ahead and subscribe and like. I'd really appreciate it, and I will see you next time.